Good evening, everyone. Um, we'll be starting with the webinar in next 2 to 3 minutes as soon as people start joining, and then we'll start with our discussion. Okay. So I can see people has already started joining. So I'll welcome everyone on behalf of Job. Right. My name is Aditya, and I handle marketing at Job. And I'm very pleased to welcome all of you who all are joining, and welcome and thanks to both the panelists, Moushumi and Mayank. Thanks for your time, and thank you for taking out this time on a weekday and joining us for this session. Right.
Thank you,
So
Aditya. Pleasure is ours.
Today's topic is balancing quantitative and qualitative feedback in CPM systems. And because our series have been around CPM, so this is one of the topics that we wanted to talk about. We wanted you to share your knowledge with the audience. And with that, I'll ask Moshmi and Mayank you to introduce yourself, give a brief to our audience, what has been your journey in the space, and we look forward to you to sharing your knowledge today.
Okay, thank
Moshmi,
you,
you can start here.
Aditya. I'll take the adage of ladies first. So, 2 decades of work experience, and it has been a myriad of overwhelming experiences. Microsoft, Boston Consulting Group, Ola Cabs, Zycus, Compass, and now currently I'm with Indospace. And I've had experiences of working in India, US, Asia Pacific. I've had the experience of starting a global capability center in India during COVID times and working with building a unicorn and having the opportunity of bringing change to an organization to the level of bringing IPO in the New York Stock Exchange to managing a global workforce and global HR head role, panning all continents of the planet Earth. So it's been quite interesting. And I've also won 6 awards along the way, including the Times Woman Professional of the Year award. And the most important thing for me is being able to connect to people, build the culture, build trust, and make a productive organization. That's really the key. Apart from work, I also am into art, although I'm a learner, not really a professional in the art space. And I run a social art organization called Art for Heart, wherein we curate and auction art to raise funds for social causes. So that's me. Very excited to be here.
Thank you so much, Moshmi. Very excited to have you as well. Mayank, please.
Thank you, Aditya. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining from. Thank you, Moushumi for your introduction, and I feel privileged that I'm sitting with you as a co-panelist here, and pleasure is all mine. I totally am a student at heart, and with whatever experience of 18 years I have with the Bank of Industries, with logistics, into retail, into SaaS-based organizations, into manufacturing, into facilities as well, where I've handled a lot of transformations into HR, a lot of performance management systems, which I have been able to deploy, but the landscape is all changing up. And good for us, good for the organizations as well. I have a lot of good, what should I say, good habits or bad habits. I Good habits means I would be into a lot of reading. Read a lot of books. Bad habits, definitely I keep my books to myself only. So that's a bad habit. I want to give it to people who want to read it as well. That I'm trying to explore as well. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you so much, Mayank, for introducing yourself. Um, I think we are here for the topic, balancing quantitative and qualitative feedback in CPM systems. And as you said that, the performance management is evolving, is changing for good. So I think this topic will give insights to the audience about how it's changing, why it's changing, right? So yeah, just a heads up for the audience that we have the Q&A box here. If you have any questions during the sessions, please drop your questions in the Q&A box, and we'll have the Q&A session at the end of the webinar, so that all the panelists, both the panelists, can answer your questions. Meanwhile, the chat is open for you to interact with the panelist, or the with the audience as well. So okay, with that we can start. So, topic being balancing quantitative and qualitative feedback in CPM systems. I would like to know from you guys, to give a base to the audience, what is continuous performance management, right? So, Moushumi, if you can just.
So continuous performance, or Kaizen. Kaizen is a Japanese term which means continuous performance or continuous improvement, is basically the continuous evolution of a person's journey, a professional's journey in the organization. So it's not a single point of delivery or result. It's an ongoing process of managing status quo. So an employee has to do status quo work, business as usual work. Plus, they also have to learn and grow and contribute and be part of the future of and growth of the organization. So when we collectively, cumulatively assess all of this, the entire journey, we map it, we chart it, and we assess it, and we measure it, and we also add something to the denominator so that it grows. So this entire process is what I would call as continuous performance. And it's not a one-way street, it's a two-way street. So one part of it is the professional, the other part is the ecosystem, which consists of the organization, the tools, the manager, the top leadership, the culture, the driving force of the organization, everything put together. So it's a very interesting journey that we are assessing and mapping.
Very, very well explained, Moushami. Mayank, if you want to add anything to this.
Yes, I resonate the same idea actually. To sum it all, continuous performance management is something which I want to change. First of all, the name of it also. Continuous performance, I would not the management. It is more of continuous performance improvements. So I would rate somewhere. I would bring in improvements here. Why I'm saying so is because of that it's a constant exercise. It's a day in, day out exercise, which happens for an individual, for the teams, and for the organization itself, where the organization can realign on almost a daily basis. And to talk it all, that say when you have problems, when you have so many interferences which are external to your, say, which you cannot control at all, then you need to realign very fast, because the world is changing so fast, because your, say, competitors are going to take away your customers, your, people to work, who are working with you. They will keep on constantly pushing you back, so that, uh, in a way where you might be at the receiving end almost. So you need to keep on realigning yourself, and probably look at the performances, areas where we can always improve, because there is a lot of scope of improvement in any field which we are in.
Right. Definitely. Um, I agree completely with you, right? Everything is continuous nowadays, right? Nothing is static. Even environment is not static. Everything is constantly improving, evolving. So why not performance, right? Why not the way we are aligning, assigning, or assessing performance, right? So that also needs to be continuous with the organization. Okay. So I'll start with the question, right? So why is balancing quantitative and qualitative feedback crucial? Moshmi, if you can.
Okay. So let me give you a little bit of a visual idea. You would have seen a volume equalizer, bass, tone, it keeps moving up and down, right? When you're trying to adjust the tone. Consider a person's performance as an exact volume equalizers between three parameters. So the first one is self-awareness. The second one is the ego state of the person. And here, ego, I'm talking in terms of self esteem, the ego, arrogance, those kind of things, not in a psychological term, a little less than that. The ego state of a person. The third is a competence. Okay, so self awareness, ego, and competence. Competence is a direct result of the interaction or interplay of these two, self esteem and ego. So what happens is, if your let me give you a state of a person, self-awareness very high, ego low, will lead to competence always high, or at least in the process of getting high. Because the self-awareness will always ensure that the person is doing something to improve. So now this
Correct.
brings us why quantitative and qualitative go hand in hand. So competence is the only thing in this entire equation which can be measured through numbers. How on
Right.
earth do you measure the self-awareness of a person? Is there a number to it? But if you do not know how well a person is aware of his or her own strengths, weaknesses, etc., what is the ego state? Can he or she understand, or is it a blocker? It's just that amount that will help you give a perspective of giving feedback, giving any kind of tools, any kind of behavioral inputs to improving the competence. So that is why the qualitative aspect of a person's dimensions go completely hand in hand with the qualitative and the quantitative and the qualitative merge together to bring the person's state of performance. It's not linear, it's not unidimensional. So competence can be measured in, the metrics, in KRA, in sales targets, in results, how many people you hired, etc., etc. But the driving force is the self-awareness and the ego state. So even if you look at a person, you talk to that person, you can still, even without any tools, you can still create a mental chart of where this person stands. I'll give you an example. If I were to tell you a non-human example, say a tiger, what do you think is the ego state of a tiger? Always high. What is the competence of a tiger? Equally high. But if you tell the tiger, hey tiger, you need to improve, will it take it? No, it will not take it.
No.
Because the ego state is high. So when it has to be in a certain level for us to know what to apply to improve to that person. A tiger is not working in any job, so it's okay. But human beings are working, right? So I can give you more examples, but it's not relevant right now. But does that answer your question, Aditya?
It does. I love both the examples, the tiger and the, tuner. It resonates with the problem, right? Mayank, if you want to add anything to this.
Yes. So I totally that is what I also want to talk about. But what I want to talk about here is there are actually three things which are here. One is the quantitative word, one is the qualitative word, and one is the feedback. Now, when we are talking about quantitative, as the word says, quantitative, it would be into metrics, it would be into some kind of deliverables, it would be into numbers. Now, does number tomorrow I have a customer satisfaction survey 8 out of 10? Does that talk about anything but a number? Only the management would what they will think of it. Okay, we are somewhere okay. But does that resonate anything else beyond it? No, because we have not found a why to it. And that why, the purpose, that why is why we could not be like 9 or 10. Why we, how we reached to 8, that's a why also. So put why before that number, and after that number, you will be able to balance the whole setup of between quantitative and qualitative in a very, very beautiful way. You will be able to talk to teams, you will be able to talk to individuals in a way with a storyline very clear that what we need to do as a feed forward and a feedback with a lot of empathy.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree to you. Okay, so we said that we give feedback, right? There's a qualitative aspect, there's a quantitative aspect. But how to make that feedback real time, how to make it continuous, that's something I want, Mayank, you to answer.
Yeah. So when we're talking about continuous feedbacks, basically, to be very frank, I do not like the word feedback because it's telling me for the past. I would like to use the word in conjunction with feedback hyphen feed forward. If that is not being talked about in a meeting with a manager, or a manager is not talking about these things, that's a problem. Now, how to give it and how frequently to give it, there's no parameter. I say in 2011, we came with quarterly performance management. Various companies started doing it. It was Infosys which had it at the first place. But does that solve of the continuous performance management? No, because it has to be a day in, day out exercise. Tomorrow, after a week, my Red Sea opens. In my industry, I'll take an example of my industry. The Red Sea, the problems are fine. Ukraine war stops. What my say strategy at that point would be, I would be very clearly realigning myself with my sales managers with a regular check-in with that manager as well. Okay, get on with the sales, right? So that's the regular check-ins. Now, with the employees, I would also be like looking at a lot of say time-bound activities, very measurable activities, very specific activities as well, right? Those can be relatively towards my objectives first. What is a team's objective? Then curtailing it down to the, say, the KRAs and the KPIs, the big words we always keep on saying, right? But to be very, very frank, when we talk about maybe a feedback system, we need to talk about that we are going to give a feedback, anything, to an individual and a team. And that's very important. Keep the metrics in place, keep everything in place, and then try to deliver in a way that it is so easy to understand to people. Do not get into a lot of jargons because people do not understand jargons. People understand.
Right.
The time we say CPM, I'm telling you, the time we say performance management, the first thing is people want to just run out of it
Right.
because it's a management. We are talking about management coming and talking to you, right? So they are afraid of it. Now, whether I'm going to be reprimanded, whether I'm going to be rewarded, what is going to happen with us, all those things. So it has to be very balanced, very time specific, have impactful things being said, talked about, a lot of empathy while we are talking about. And believe me, to be frank, over empathy is also a bit of a concern these days. We talk
Yeah.
about a lot of empathy. I've seen a lot of people with over empathy as well. So that has to be guarded while we are speaking. We do not live the problem with the people, with the individuals or the teams. Try to assess the problem and give them a solution. Do not live the problem with them. So that's what my take is on this.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Moushumi, if you want to summarize what Mayank said, or you want to add something to it.
Sure. And Mayank has already said some very relevant points. I'll just add some few pointed do's and don'ts on it, which are really, really critical as far as execution is concerned. So the number one do, which I always recommend when it comes to feedback, is use the FED method. The FED, federal, Fed, easy to remember. FED is facts, evidence, data. Very, very important. Anything else is hearsay, anecdotal, etc. So always have your FEDs ready. Don't use the sandwich method. It doesn't work because it is just in contrast to FED. FED is clear cut data, evidence, facts. Sandwich, what happens? The messaging gets mixed. Are you saying a good thing? Are you saying a bad thing? Often you will see people hearing what they want to hear. So if a person, so taking on from the self-awareness, ego and competence charter, if a person is not self-aware, in a sandwich method, they'll hear only the good things. They'll feel, so while the manager is trying to say, hey, you have a lot of things to improve about, this person will go happily from a feedback session and say, bahut acha gaya. My manager just loves me. So don't use the sandwich method. Please be aware of the situation of every team, every individual, etc., because there's a time perspective. If a team is going through a transition, for example, if a team is going through attrition, if a team has had a change of leader, very often that has a real-time impact on the performance. So be aware. So be aware of it. Take that into consideration. Don't have a patronizing and elitist behavior. Many times when people give a feedback, the mannerism is like Mayank said, there is over empathy and there is patronizing. So both are equally bad. So over empathy is like you're absolutely giving a mixed messaging, and patronizing is you don't know it, I know it. There's a good chance that there'll be very strong resistance to that kind of a behavior. Then the next do, and it's the same do and the same don't, is eliminate the biases, do, and don't use the biases. So for example, recency effect is a bias, or somebody coming from a pedigree can be a bias. Somebody not coming from a pedigree could be a bias. So please be aware of this because they interact and interfere with the efficacy of the feedback system. So those are my additional points to what Mayank already said.
Very well said. I think this do's and don'ts should be, a collateral we should share with our audience, right? Um, very well said. Okay. So we said that real-time feedback is how we are doing it continuously, right? What should be the do's and don'ts of that? But how the leaders can make this, make the employees feel like that the feedback is not just a number, right? The performance metrics is not just a number. So Moshmi, you're you're passionate about designing workplace cultures, I would want to pose this question to you.
So, like I said, that the entire process of performance is a continuous journey. It's not one single point, and feedback is one part of it. So the journey doesn't start with feedback; it's a part of it. So the whole
Right.
method of performance and how leaders can make employees feel included and inclusive, and it's does not at the end of it, we all want it to be effective and a smooth method and not come as a shocker. So some of the key
Right.
points is to ensure that there are open door channels for communication and collaboration with or without a system. So performance management tool is one part of it, feedback system is one part of it, communication is something much bigger than that. So creating a safe space, having a continuous method of interacting with people, keeping your ears to the ground, always necessary from a leader perspective. Number one. Number two, what I call as always noting the critical incidents. Now, when I say critical incidents, I'm not referring to something like an emergency situation. It is a simple thing because every little thing adds up to creating an idea of a person's behavior, intellectual thought process, emotional maturity, etc. So, simple thing like, say, for example, who is the person who always volunteers? Who is the person who always makes excuses? There was an emergency situation when people needed to work on Saturday, and who is the person who came willingly? Who takes on extra work? Who is the one who's always spreading gossip? So every leader worth his or her salt should have those incidents clear, because once the flaw in performance management system is only when the time starts we start noting things, but the person has not been working on the specific times alone. He or she has been there all through. So what happens to those unnoticed data? So those are the critical incidents which a leader should always have, so that you add this and you add a little bit of the performance KRAs, then you add your own observation, voila, and you get an entire picture. Then the third part is the leader should always have one eye on the future. Very often, we as leaders, we are swayed by immediate needs of the team and the organization. So we are crediting people on BAU, on status quo. And it is possible that a person is very good at status quo jobs, but the person doesn't have the potential. So key ingredient of performance management or feedback is also to see the potential and the evolution points for the person. So it is only fair that if a person is currently doing a great job but does not have potential to grow with the growing organization, we are able to have that conversation so that the person can choose whether he or she wants a career here, or they can be more meaningful somewhere else, or they can improve within the organization. So not giving a bad news is not really good news. So we have to change some of those ideologies that we hold on to. So these are some of the things I live and work and I encourage people to do it.
Sure. I mean, as you said, the potential should also be with the do's of Fed, right? It shouldn't be sandwich. We're not giving everyone average potential, right?
Right.
If potential should be with, the data, evidence, right? Okay. So this is what HR leaders can do, you know. And Mayank, I want to ask you that how how we can train the managers to deliver the balanced and actionable feedback.
Before this, the previous question, when you're saying HR leaders, performance management, or maybe performance, whatever you may call it, it's not HR's job. I want to make it say very clear to the audience. It's not an HR job. HR can only be an enabler.
Enabler, right?
It's when you're doing a continuous performance management exercise or you're driving it, it's a core activity of each manager. And that is what
Right.
Moushumi also said it. about. Because
Right.
how many HRs you will have on a floor which can probably look at those many people? You have managers, because in each manager you have certain HR skill set, and
Correct.
that is most important. So basically, uh, I would put as leaders driving this, not as HR. HR can be an enabler, can be a point of check on all these activities within the organization, but cannot be the person who is driving in, day out.
Definitely. I mean, this question, this your answer makes my question more relevant now, and I would change the wording. So, how HRs can enable managers to, give proper feedback, deliver feedback with, balanced and actionable feedback. How they can do that?
Say Aditya, say when we always used to have like quarterly exercises, and we had say biannual exercises, and then we had annual exercises. We always used to have one HRBP sitting with managers, right? And why we want that one HRBP to sit with the, say, these managers is to check in how is the delivery. Now,
Right.
look at people like what we admire. Let's talk about a bit of say something which is very dear to us. Uh, when we talk about delivery, we will find that uh, that yeah. Can you hear me, please?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So when you will find that delivery, it will always be looked at whether it was a very good feedback session or maybe a bad feedback session, and it is always skewed into one directional. And what does that happen? Because it happens because only of one reason, that metrics is more, say, heavy on the qualitative, the why. It is very
Correct.
very heavy on that. Now you can have those say metrics in place, and it's very very important to have that, but that's the starting point of it.
Point.
Okay? Once you start that, then you start delivering the feed forward and the feedback, right, in a way that it is very important for the person sitting or the team sitting to understand it. Now how to do it? You can probably have sessions with the managers. Why? Because it's them who is going to, say, let people perform under them. It is very important to have their buy-in. So it can be through, say, one-to-one coaching. It can be kind of rounded coaching with some agency, right? It can be some kind of feedbacks being put across, some pulse surveys, some customer satisfaction surveys, all those things which can be there. And to be very, very frank with you, when you need to tell in manager that you need to be on the point of discussion, do not digress the point of discussion, right? Because when you go into a meeting, it is very clear people would start comparing it with others, right? And
Right.
that will be very bad as a on in that situation. So you need to have that stoppage at that place. Stop the manager at that point in time, right? And connect that manager to the person's performance.
Sure. I mean, you know, we are talking here more about qualitative feedback, right? Because mostly in the organizations, it's the middle child which gets ignored at the time of performance, right?
It is
So,
very it is very, very important that
right,
when people know what they're going to talk about in these say exercises, right? They
right,
will keep on talking about whatever they will feel about the metrics, right? It is very, very important for people to understand it. But the point of action here, point of thought here is that people need to understand what is the delivery they are going to give it to their employees, whether that delivery is going to, how impactful it is, how it is going to probably, when the person moves out of that room or maybe a session, or how it sees it, whether the person is going to be thinking that I'm going to be with this company or not. That's the answer.
Motivated or demotivated. Yeah.
So the delivery of things has to be very, very important. And say, and this is also very important when you're making anybody as a, say, a manager as well, and putting a team under that manager, whether the manager can handle that team efficiently, empathetically,
Right.
giving a feedback, giving something to work on. All these points are very important, because today I can very well say that you have not done that, but tomorrow that person comes in, how you have say, let me handle that problem as well. Have you enabled me to
Right.
handle that problem? Have you counseled me to handle that problem? That's very important.
Very, very well said, man. Moushumi, if you want to add anything to this.
Sure, it's a very, very, according to me, it's the most important question. And I'll tell you why, Aditya. I have a little bit of a disconnect with the question itself. It's not the HR's job to enable the manager. It is the HR's job to align the manager to the organization goals. So the HR's
Okay.
job is to be to enable the organization, to elevate the organization. Manager is one part of it.
Right.
So that's the whole idea. And just to give you a small example of how managerial skills can come and go, it only has an impact on the organization. The organization is the larger picture. So during my time in Microsoft, first we had Bill Gates, who had a very different style. Then we had Steve Ballmer, who had a very different style. And then we had Satya Nadella, who's there right now, who has a very different style. Who's to say Microsoft has flourished more or less under anybody's managerial skill? So, managerial skill actually can be very different, and it is not our job to unify it. It's more to
Right.
see whether what we extract out of each managerial skill and make it useful for the organization. That's the job. So, from that perspective, the role that we play is, I am a big advocate of different formulas and pillars. So the three pillars I think we all need to focus on is one is, and that's uniform, whether it is for an individual contributor or for a manager or for a leader. First, we are supposed to, engage with the person to make that person feel strongly aligned to the organization. Then we have to empower them with whatever it takes, right? Feedback, coaching, mentoring, tools, training, learning, etc. And then we have to ensure that together it leads to a sense of elevation. Elevation is basically the result, production of the desired result in terms of performance, in terms of organizational goals, in terms of action items, etc. So that's a role that the human resource professional plays. And it is not just for the managers, it is for every employee. It is also for the stakeholders of the organization. We also have a responsibility for the customers, for the clients, for the investors, for everyone. So that's my thought on this or take on this.
Very well said, Moushumi. So as we can see that there's a transformation in the workforce, right? We are seeing more Gen Zs now in the offices, right? So how important is the balance between quantitative and qualitative feedback for the Gen Z workforce, right? Moushumi, if you can.
So, Aditya, sometimes I feel bad. In every forum, every discussion, we single out the Gen Z and talk about them as if they are a different species.
By the way, I'm a Gen Z myself, so I definitely want to hear your answer to this.
So Aditya, do you feel singled out? Let me ask you that first.
So not really, because
Okay.
this is there is a transformation, right? There's a
Right,
change
right,
that we have to address.
right,
So, and how to address it better, how to address it in a way that it's useful for everyone. We don't have the experience to know about it. We are
right,
learning
right.
from you experts, that how to build it better, how to make sure that our upcoming workforce is aligned with the goals.
Right, right. So to answer your question, Aditya, I'll begin with what I have said in the past. It's very important to know the background. Like I was telling in with team, do you have a new leader? Is there transformation? Similarly, it's very important to understand the cultural background of any Gen Z. So this is a generation that has seen tremendous usage of technology.
Right.
Most part, unfortunately, in the last 4 5 years, it's no longer true. But most of them have not grown up in the era of ongoing war. For example, World War I and World War II happened in the span of a few decades. So the same generation went through both of them. Imagine their mental
Right.
transformation. Gen Z was safeguarded from all of that. They also have been raised by hardworking parents who made it their business to give a lot of luxury to this particular generation. So probably they are not very used to the concept of digging very hard to get something. So keeping all of this in mind, it is important to connect and engage with Gen Z in a very, to begin with, in a real tech way. Nobody understands technology better than this generation as of now. Soon, when Gen Alpha will come, then they'll give a tough competition to Gen Z. But right now, that's the generation that understands technology. So if we talk something that is non-tech, the good chance you lose their interest. Number one. Number two, they've got used to smaller data sets. Any
Right.
conversation that goes on for hours and hours, any piece of data which is very long, any long sentence, everything, because they're used to getting everything in small bits and pieces, not necessarily in incomplete way, but the everything is cut into smaller sizes. So that is the method we have to replicate when we are interacting with Gen Z, either to engage for their performance or feedback or etc. I cannot have long sentences, long phrases, long meetings and expect it to be fruitful when I'm interacting with Gen Z. That is the second one. The
Right.
third is they have a lack of delayed gratification. I'm not going to get into whether it is right or wrong. It is what it is. So when we are talking of feedback and we want some change to happen, we have to give a very visual, very real timeline of what is it in it for them. Right?
Right.
If I am not tying it to a smaller, same thing, cutting it into small pieces, I cannot tell them you work today and you will get your result after 2 years. They won't be interested. So even if you are cutting it to 2 years pace, let there be something after 2 weeks, after 2 months, after 6 months, after 1 year, after 1.5 years, and so on. So let the span be 2 years, but cut it into smaller sizes of give and take. So these are the ways Gen Z can be, worked with, and they can be engaged with. One last thing, this comes from again real experience. They're very much open to listening and learning, provided they have the respect for that particular leader. So we have worked in an era where we were told anybody who's senior to you has to be respected. Gen Z doesn't come with that thought process. They respect only people who they think know better than them. So I think it's a good opportunity for managers, middle level managers and leaders to up their game also.
Right.
Improve your skill, you will
Yeah.
automatically find your Gen Z team looking up to you. So these are things which I've tried and worked, and it has been helpful. So thankfully, because of all of these things, we have never had in any of my organization, I have never had any problem of working with Gen Z. I've actually found them to be very good and sporting people.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, not all Gen Zs are looking for the big picture right now, right? They're looking to short videos. They're looking for the reels as well. All the 2 weeks progress of their work. Mike, if you want to add anything to this.
Gen Z is basically what I say always when I have interacted with these people. Uh, they are like uh, quick bites. They like, that is one thing which they like. They want to say engage with you. That's not a problem at all. But they want to actually get out of that meeting with some, say, takeaways. And if that takeaway is not there, then they keep on, say, probably thinking why I even was there in that meeting as well. So that is very, very important. And that's the feedback which we always want to give to these people. They actually want the actionable items. They
Right.
do not want that you tell them, okay, in 1 month's time, you have to say complete this task or develop this thing. You tell them that in 10 days time we'll have a check-in and probably we should be here. Have
Right.
those milestones for them, and then when those milestones are achieved, reward them as well, motivate them as well. And when that motivation keeps on happening, they keep on, say, engaging themselves into newer activities. They do not want to do one activity and keep on doing it over and over again for years to come, which as millennials we used to always do, right?
Yeah.
But not the Gen Zs or Gen Alphas. Definitely they will not do it, because look at the time span they have. They are of the generation who is like on reels today, right? They have very short, say, span of thought. They will they're so smart, they will quickly make up their mind. And once that mind is made up, it is very, very hard for any manager to just move them out of that mindset. So you need to capture at the right moment their mindset. And once that mindset is it, everything will be taken care of. So engage with them on a daily basis almost.
Yeah, I think the continuous part of performance is much more needed for the upcoming generation as well. So yeah, I definitely agree to what you said. Um, so before we take the question in the Q&A box, I just want to ask, right? How what is your expectations as HR leaders is from the technology like job, like a software which is enabling continuous performance management? What is your expectations from a technology like that? Mike, we can start with you.
Okay, so basically, when we're talking about technology, first of all, we do not want a technology where we are helping the technology. First of all, there are a lot of programs, lot of things which are there in the market, which will talk about these things. The HR professionals are basically helping them to do something, right?
Right.
As HR professionals, we want something that it can give a real-time information of a person at the lowest level in the organization and at the highest level of the organization as well, right? When we talk about these two things, then basically your strategy gets aligned to the end user as well. So a technology like job is something which can deliver. I have seen the tool a bit. So I can very well tell that there are two or three things which are very, very important when the feedback is being taken care of. Just like, let's suppose there is a person who is in one department. Can that one department live on its own in the organization?
Right.
Cannot. So
Dependency is
you,
always there.
there is a lot of interdependencies which are there
Yeah.
within the organization. How many say tools are there which can let us know whether interdepartmental interdependencies are working fine? That is
Right.
the most important activity for any say continuous performance management system, to have it in it. And when it is going to happen, then the whole strategic way of working for the management will keep on getting aligned, and it will say it will go from top to bottom and bottom to up as well.
Right.
It will realign itself continuously. It will realign. So it would be more of, when you have those kinds of data, then you can have a lot of AI into it as well, because AI will only talk about data points, right? A lot of other things can be, but this is the basic thing which technology can give it to us. That's my
Yeah,
take on
I
it.
mean, alignment between, the interdependency, the visual, the representation of that interdependency between departments, and why, uh, you know, one department is not able to achieve something, right? The reason why it can be another department, right? It can be something another
Yes, yes,
department
yes.
couldn't achieve.
You have
So definitely,
actually, you have come to that point of why. Again,
right,
the why. I am telling you, this why. If any department answers a why we exist, why we do a certain activity, if this can be answered for any department, then most of the strategies, most of the things, most of the feedbacks, they will fall in place. People do not understand why they are working. They're not aligned to the organization goals, to the team goals first, and to again go back to even say individual goals as well. So once the individual goals are, say, framework, then team, then organization, right? And it will align. Now, we have been talking about interdependencies. We are human beings, right?
right.
And say even animals also have a lot of interdependencies on each other.
Interdependence.
Why we just remove the nature out of this uh, performance feedback, performance improvement exercises, or performance management systems?
Right.
Do not remove nature out of
Definitely agreed. Agreed. Moushumi, what's your expectation from the technology?
So, Aditya, I've always worked in the tech side of things from the time when there used to be C, C++, Windows level kerneling, then it moved to Ruby on Rails, Java. Then now today we have AI and robotics and big learning, big data and things like that. So I'm a very tech-centric HR person. The things that I think are going to be valuable from organization productivity perspective is, and these are already there, the tools are there, they are getting developed even as we speak, is emotion and sentiment analysis. It helps us to predict that part, as I was saying, self awareness, the ego
Awareness.
aspect of
Yeah.
it. Though there are challenges in that, because I know that AI today can only detect first and second level of emotions. A very smart person can confuse the two. So it cannot detect irony, sarcasm, and it's good that it cannot. Let humans do certain things
Yeah.
exclusively. So that part, so the predictive behavior, the emotion, sentiment analysis, one part. And the other part is, suppose Aditya, you and me, we are working together. So your emotion, sentiment analysis, mine. So therefore, when we work together, what could be the collaborative energies and what could be the bottlenecks in terms of
Yeah.
performance. If that kind of a scorecard it comes out, it can be a truly breakthrough moment of how to utilize it in a positive way, so that the bottlenecks are proactively handled and the collaborative energies are utilized to the best of the abilities. If we can have tools and technology helping us with that, enabling us with that, it'll really reduce, I think, easily 30-40% of the, or maybe more, the stress that we find today at workplaces. So that's my expectation from technology. And as I said, I know that it is not at the current stage is not at stage 0. The already tools
Yeah,
are there. There's a lot of tech research that's going on it, and it is a lot of good things waiting to come.
definitely. AI is evolving, technology is evolving. I'm sure that we'll be seeing the whole idea into execution, into actual technology uh, very soon. Um, okay, so we have just one question in the Q&A box. So the question says, say if I want to start CPM, then what are the first few steps? How can I add it in the current traditional performance management? So, Moushumi, if you want to give your take on this.
Sure. One thumb rule of solving any problem is how well do you understand the problem? Only then can you solve it. So your current situation, current system, first there is a stage of evaluation that is required. What is working well? What is not working well? And for the next 5 years of the organization, what is it that you need? What is the gap right now? Once you have that clear list, then your path forward will be easier on seeing on a do not take a full 5 year framework. First 6 months, what is it that I can do to measure on a everyday basis, weekly basis, monthly basis? So use the agile framework, agile methodology. I can go on and on about it, but to give it in a nutshell, agile helps us in cutting a big framework into smaller pieces, working on each piece at a time, seeing the efficacy of it, and moving on. So, if you do not want to make a big bang change, first figure out what's going right, what's not going right, what is the vacuum you need to fill. Come with 3, 4, 5 action areas and work on it 2 weeks at a time to see how to make that change. And if you connect, whoever has asked this question, please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn and we can discuss on it more.
Sure. I mean, both socials of both the panelists are in the chat box. People can go reach out to them. Have if they have any questions, they can directly ping them. Mayank, your take on this. What are the few steps, first steps for this?
So, first of all, I did not like the word traditional, to be very frank with you. Traditional is something telling me that, okay, it's somewhere in 90s or 2000s we're talking about. No, something which is I'm not resonating to. So, first of all, the person has not looked into it for a very, very long period of time. Now, not looking at it, so I am with a hypothesis, the person might be doing a biannual or maybe an annual exercise.
Totally. Mm.
That's not CPM at all, to be frank. CPM very clearly, when you're talking about continuous, it has to be day in, day out exercise. You need to formulate certain kinds of objectives in place for first of all the departments. One is this. Second, get to the teams. Then get to the maybe the individual levels. And maybe pilot it in whatever organization you are into.
Yeah.
Once you pilot it and maybe have regular check-ins for a quarter, try to understand what are the takeaways, what is not working and what is working. Realign your objectives again and do it for a certain departments wherein you are pitching it for, right? Which are not very critical to your organization as of now. But realign them with your organization's strategy itself, right? What are they actually going to talk about if their deliverables, how it is going to impact the organization? Once that gets implemented into place, implement with objectives, first of all, with for all the at the organization level. Start doing it. Then get into certain result areas which can be delivered. Then educate people into why we are talking about KPIs then. Why the indicators? Why it is most important? Until unless you educate people and move from them from a traditional exercise of performance management to a continuous performance, until unless you educate them, they will not feel what's in for me. Until unless people understand this, the managers do not understand it, they will keep on saying a no to the change management.
Mm,
And that is the framework which needs to be put into place.
yeah, definitely. This is it's building a culture of continuity, right? There are no first steps. There's no, from where you can start. The only way we can start is building that culture of continuity and then bringing whatever technology, whatever framework that we want, right? Um, okay, I think it's we are on right time. So thank you so much, Mayank. Thank you so much, Moushumi, for joining this session. It was very insightful for me, and I'm sure that it was insightful for the audience as well. We have we have we have dropped the socials of both the panelists in the chat box. People can reach out to them. If you want to reach out to Job, you can, there's a form to fill. Please fill the form and we'll reach out to you. Thanks so much. Thank you so much, Mayank. Thank you so much, Maushmi.
Thank you,
Thank you, Aditya. It was a
Aditya.
pleasure.
Thank you, Mayank. Thank you,
Thank you,
Janvi.
Moushumi.
Thank you.
Thank
Had
you,
a good
everybody.
time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Same here.